being bold and standing up to the entire left-wing mob? Like, which is it? I'm going to read his book, and I'm pretty sure he's going to try to act like he's as a victim of some kind. Lean Dion says Alex Jones also has a video game like Father Like Son. My Third Eye says Christopher Nolan's filmmaking talent is dwarfed by Kubrick and many other filmmakers of previous generations. He's probably the best they've got these days. Yeah, and remember too, Christopher Nolan, and he is compared, I think, to Kubrick, and I think he's probably, honestly, I like his work better. But in terms of the meta script writers and all these different directors that we can point at, Nolan is hugely important right now. And it's interesting that in The Dark Knight Rises, they have that scene which foreshadows 2020 where he says, "Put on the mask. It's not for you. It's to protect the people that you love." So you have Batman in 2012 channeling 2020 Fauci. Then he pulls out a COVID ball. It looks like a COVID ball, a spiked ball, but it's a smoke grenade. And he says, "Count to 5 and throw it." So it gets thrown, and then what happens? It blows up into a mushroom cloud. Now, if you put this together, COVID and then a mushroom cloud. So what's the next psyop? What's the next one with spectacle? It's probably going to be Christopher Nolan directing the nuke, which they probably filmed when they did the Oppenheimer movie. So it's already been prepared, I'm saying. And is it interesting, too, that back in 2012, Oppenheimer wasn't even being talked about yet? Nobody knew that Nolan was going to make a movie about the nuke. And yet, here he is foreshadowing the nuke in the Batman movie, which foreshadowed COVID. And again, they made heavy use of a burning bat, the sculpture, the symbol throughout the Batman series under Nolan. Well, a burning bat, it's a bat as Phoenix. And the Phoenix symbol is the symbol of the reset. We have the Great Reset because of COVID, triggered by the bat. So the bat was the catalyst. The Phoenix symbol is one of the most common and important symbols, I think, to understand this cult. Sometimes it's a phoenix, sometimes it's a bat, sometimes, like the crow, it's a raven. Then you've got the dove, Noah's Ark, a reset symbol, shows up after the flood. But these various reset symbols are, and there's another one coming out too. There's a movie called Songbird that already came out. But Songbird, which came out in, I think it was 2021, it's about another pandemic, but it was about COVID 2023. Yep, here we have it. Songbird. Get ready for COVID 23, making a pandemic thriller. Here we have it. Initially conceived as a creature feature, coronavirus gave Songbird, the first film shot in LA since March, a terrifyingly real monster. So Songbird 2020, American dystopian science fiction, was shot in March of 2020, first one since the pandemic. Okay, so anyway, my point of it being, and by all accounts, it's an awful movie, but it's set in 2023. So some have suggested, well, maybe they're going to do something in 2024, like COVID-19 shows up in 19, but it doesn't get real until 2020. But my point in bringing this up is I'm talking about the reset symbol and the phoenix and the bat and the dove. Well, the Songbird movie makes use of a phoenix-like symbol of a bird. And again, it's just very consistent symbolism. If you see here, it's the outline of a bird. I haven't seen it. I may check it out. But again, just pointing it out, another consistent thing. Hunger Games, another dystopian post-reset type movie. And it has the mockingjay, often burning. You see it in flames. And it's holding an arrow instead of an olive branch, but it's the same symbol. Again, here's the Songbird movie poster. No, then you got, let me bring up the burning bat. And Christopher Nolan's brother is the one, is it Nathan? What's Christopher Nolan's brother's name? Who's the one who did Westworld? A lot of intriguing and interesting symbolism there. But again, here you have various images of the burning bat from Dark Knight Rises. Here it is. It's a bat-shaped hole in a building, or is it a plane-shaped hole? Welcome to a world without rules, The Dark Knight. Again, this is all predictive programming for COVID and the reset and the catalyst, which would, of course, be... Look, it made no sense at the time, the bowl of bat soup thing. That was never believable. It was probably never meant to be. But they needed that because it's a major prop. And does anybody here remember who the whistleblower was in Wuhan? A guy named Wee Lion. The first one to catch it. And he died trying to save the world by being a whistleblower. Anybody here know how old Wee Lion was? Wuhan's whistleblower who tried to save us. Anyone care to guess how old he was when he died? That's correct. 33 years old, the first casualty of it. Lean Dion says a new Hunger Games movie is out. I'll have to check it out. It's got to be concurrent programming. I watched the new Godzilla movie, all about the nuke. As far as predictive programming with Godzilla, it probably is just more or less reinforcing the dread and the fear of nuclear weapons and the Kraken symbolism. And part of it too is just the visuals of the destruction. But for the most part, though, the movie was just all around self-sacrifice for the future, preserving the nuclear family. So that's kind of interesting too, if you think about it. Oppenheimer splitting the nuke, Barbie destroying the nuclear family, killing babies at the beginning, going her own way, Barbie Land, Babylon. So I'm like, wait a minute here. Splitting the nuke, or splitting the atom, the nuclear bomb, splitting the nuclear family. There's something here. And then the Godzilla movie, it was all about how the war was tearing their families apart, leaving orphans, and they had to come together to bring back these family units for the future. So there's something there. Lean Dion says they want the world to think it's a lab leak thing. Yeah, the lab leak thing, the bio lab thing, is a guardrail, alternative, red herring, inside job explanation so that people don't go with the it's all fake. And that's really what they want to avoid. They want to avoid any kind of discussion about things being exceptionally fake because, of course, what does that imply? It implies that the media has the power to fake reality. And that's their main power. That's what's being hidden here. The power of the monolithic media is the power to simulate events into reality. Controlling the future. I mean, it's total reality control. Even without getting into the subject of reality co-creation, perceivers creating reality, or any of that, just reality curation itself. You know, it's what religions and cults have always done, but now it's just done to the billions at a time by the mass media, which has created the massified mind. All right, thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate the comments. This is Death to the Ball, One-Eyed Jack in the Shells. We'll be live tomorrow morning for the IPS Morning Deprogram. If you want to get the archives, go to ips.monster and sign up for the newsletter.
We are seeking was a turd.
Hawking is a fraud. NASA is a hoax. Coriolis is a bunch of bull. Take a look with your own eyes. It's the end of the world. You know they're gonna lose it now. Babylon is falling. Terror's reload everywhere.
There's no room for the ball.
Requiem for the ball. It's all over now. Babylon is going to fall. Babylon is
Life.
falling.
And I was going to say life imitates psyops far more than psyops imitate life because we live in a psyop-driven society. These are just stories. Exalt says, I won't post anti-vax. And I am a free speech absolutist. But free speech does entail a few obligations. Like you have to accept the consequences of what you're going to say. It's perfectly legal to say what you want to say, and you can make your cases. But just because of the political climate, it doesn't make sense. And then the other part of it is nobody in there, in the server, literally not one person is going to be in any way, shape, or form enlightened by any of your anti-vax postings because they've seen it all a million times. You'd be like, it's so redundant. It's like, well, who are you helping here? All you're doing is virtue signaling. Like, look at me, I care for Democrats. I mean, isn't that ultimately what you're saying? Because this is a political decision. The people who side with the MSM church and its priesthood and take its communion are always going to go that way. Glenn Clark says, I walked away for a second. Are you all mad at me? No. We're not mad at anybody. Just pointing out the fact that we had to kick an anti-vaxxer out of the Discord server. Because anti-vax is the position of the dupe who has taken the bait for the establishment-friendly counter-narrative. Why are you carrying water for the mainstream media? Tucker Carlson, episode 32, said, you'll be shocked to learn this. But it turns out the whole George Floyd story was a lie. This is such a ridiculous guardrail. Anybody who still thinks this is like groundbreaking is just the exact kind of clueless they need you to be.
Now that we know that it was not, in fact, a pandemic of the unvaccinated, now that we know that Ukraine is not actually winning the war against Russia, it could be time to revisit some of the other slogans we've been assured are true and ordered to repeat. Are they, in fact, true? Did, for example, a racist white cop actually murder?
Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, Tim, real quick. Hey, how you doing? Real quick on the Joe Biden thing and his chin and stuff. You're familiar with the video of Gerald Ford being asked the question, when will we see the first female president, at the Herbert Hoover Library, where he's interviewed by a bunch of little kids and a little girl asks him the question, and he kind of gives this long answer, like very specific too, about how it will happen or won't happen, as though they'll get voted in like the normal way. There'll be an old man in office and he'll die, and that's how the first female president will take over.
Oh, that's
but
right.
The funny
Yes,
thing,
yes.
real quick about that.
Yes, exactly. He did say something about this. Go on.
Yeah, there's a video about it. It's online. But what's funny about that is, with Kamala Harris being in office, if this did happen, she would take over. Kamala Harris was born on the day Herbert Hoover died.
Oh, that's
like
weird.
The exact same day.
Okay. Kamala Harris
super
was
weird.
born the day Hoover died. I'm gonna have to look into that. These birth dates and death dates are very interesting. Yeah, you're right. 1989, the Gerald Ford interview.
Yeah.
He did say that a woman would occupy the office by being elected upon the death of the president. What a weird thing to say.
It's so weird.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. To
Yeah.
a little kid. But I mean, if you've read, I don't know about what you think of Kathy O'Brien's book. She had a lot to say about Gerald Ford and herself dealing with him, but I don't know about all that stuff. I mean, that could all be hearsay with that book, but I mean, he did have a thing for little kids, I guess.
Terrible. Nothing about any of these
Yeah,
characters would shock me at the end of the day. But yeah, this is
right.
definitely a strange line that he was given, and he did say it to a young lady, and I really don't think that this would be an off the cuff thing. But yeah, I'll play the quote here after you hang up because this is probably relevant. I mean, definitely Biden's face is melting. I mean, how much further can you go?
Yeah, I mean, and if this stuff is, if they are messing with people, maybe the guy's already been taken out or put on a celebrity island, and they're just kind of teasing us for his upcoming death. Who knows?
Interesting, interesting. And the thing about Kamala Harris's birthday coinciding with Hoover's death day, I'm not suggesting reincarnation, but they place a lot of stock on dates and astrology. So
Yeah,
there's something there.
yeah. Oh, for sure. All right. Anyways, man, I'll keep listening and enjoy I'm enjoying it. Just wanted to
Cool.
throw that in.
Appreciate you calling in. Calling anytime. Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Okay, let's get to this clip. This is 1989 President Ford interview on female
for
presidents.
president and a woman for vice president. And the woman and man will win. So you'll end up with a president, a male, and a vice president, a female. And in that term of office of the president will die. And the woman will become president under the law or constitution. And once that barrier is broken, from then on, men better be careful because they'll have a hard time ever even getting a nomination.
Now that's an interesting and ominous warning, considering the proximity to the release of the Barbie feminism, Barbie Land, this horror of Babylon, and the Ken dollification of men today, toxic masculinity and all that. Very interesting and very detailed. I'm going to play this last few seconds again here.
Hard time ever even getting a nomination in the future. But that's the way it's going to happen, and I think it'll probably come sometime in the next 4 or 8 years.
Now he was off there. He thought it'd be sooner than later. But that scenario was quite specific. I would have guessed 33 years. Glenn Clark says, "I'm clearly not mad at me, but Tim being savage to the anti-vax, we're just trying to help people see a point that they're dangerous." No pun intended, I'm sure. And to that I would argue that the people who want to take your AR-15s just want to help you see the point that those things are dangerous, that guns kill people. In fact, I will make the moral and intellectual equivalency between anti-vax and anti-gun. Guns versus needles, left versus right. One is active, one is passive. They are both involved in self. Okay, I am hijacking this live stream right now, so let me go ahead and put this up on the screen. I should probably put a warning that we're going to have some spoilers. We're going to be talking about the movie Leave the World Behind. Let me go ahead and send out. Okay, notifications have been sent out. They're scheduled, so any minute now. And next thing I need to do is update the titles. And you know what? I want to change the title to reflect the blog post that I just made about the movie. I did a review, and I caught something in it immediately, which, if you're just looking at the story and ignoring the extraneous details, you might ignore the brief flash of the number 1619, which showed up on the person's radio, car radio. And that number has some very specific reference to the 1619 Project, which is a view of the history of the United States that's inclusive of the years leading up to 1776. It doesn't start there, but it actually would start when the first slaves arrived in Virginia. And I thought, this movie has too much in the area of racial politics already kind of thrown in there. And it's pretty obvious, and I'll get into that in the review, for that not to mean something. And then I was looking into this deeper, and I was reading about the 1619 Project. And I came across this fact that I didn't know, which is that the first ship that brought the enslaved Africans landed at Point Comfort in today's Fort aboard a ship called White Lion. And the movie really kicks off when a big lion crashes on the beach. So that cements it that the 1619 project and the White Lion, the White Lion and the 1619 are a reference to that project. And the significance of this has to do with the left versus right, the BLM critical race theory perspective on America versus the Western chauvinist, the Proud Boy view, the MAGA view. So it's 1776 versus 1619. And this is the real point of the whole catastrophe scenario, is that something would happen that would cause a collapse, and then the internal existing tensions within the nation, not just political left and right, but racial and otherwise, old grievances, etc., would be played upon by the enemy. Anyway, I'll get through the review, but I wanted to point out that the title of the review, The Leave the World Behind 1619 Project versus 1776 White Nationalism Subtext, is the main thing I took out of it. And again, this has everything to do with the involvement of the Obamas in this project. Okay, let me go ahead and go through some comments. Now, if I'm not live and someone is commenting, etc., I will be going back and checking it, so I can't always catch everything. And I see here, okay, fascinating. Spirit Jordak actually posted his notes from watching the movie, and this was great. There were so many, and we wanted to do a watch party, but it was 2.5 hours, and I had to break my watching up into 3 different segments. But a lot of people here watched it and posted their notes, and I'm looking through the notes here. Okay, so radio's on 1619 station. Oh, you found it too. The year of the arrival of the White Lion to the port. Okay, nailed it there. So I'm glad that's being picked up on. And then, of course, the Obey t-shirt. Okay, this is great. I'm going through the notes. And again, the notes are all posted in Discord, and you can also go to Twitch and find them as well. I'm going to see if I've missed anything. There's quite a lot here. By the way, Julia Roberts' birthday is 10/28, the day Matt Perry died. So that's a big deal. The day Matt Perry died, because there's a lot of references to the final episode of Friends, the finale. Stogie1 said, "Do you read the chat here?" That was a few hours ago. Echo Charlie says, "Babyface Kyle got the quickest trial in modern history." Listening to the 24/7 Gage Grossarm still cracks me up. Well, his name is now Peter Prediger. Not Predator, Prediger. It was J.J. Rosenbaum who was the Predator, who was shot in the pelvis, which is poetic justice. And for those lefties who are still mourning over that creep, he died doing something he loved, chasing a minor. So you can take comfort in that. Yeah, Pete Trippa asks if phones are open. Yeah, let me go ahead and turn on the phones. And I'm going to go through the review, but I just want to make sure that everyone is here and they are aware that there's going to be spoilers. Echo says, "Somebody got that kid with the white hat at the rally, just the type they were looking for Project H465. Yeah, Kyle was 17. Kyle Rittenhouse was 17 when he shot Gage. When he shot Gage's bicep off, or squibbed him. Was that a squib? Was it fake? But he was 17 with a white hat, and that was taken to mean something by the Qs. I'm just going to call them the Qs now. They get mad when I call them Kool-Aid drinkers or crack smokers or the QAnons. They say, we're not QAnons. There's Q and there are Anons. Okay, so you're Anons and then you worship Q. And like there is no Q. It's too mystical for me. So I'm just going to call them the Qs. I'm not going to make a distinction between Qs and QAnons in Q. I'm sorry. I'm not going to get lost in their lingo. Like, I will call them whatever I want to, basically. And if they're Anons, they can't really cry about it because they don't exist. Anonymous people are cowards. I just had to point this out. Anonymous trolls have no clout. They don't exist. They don't own what they state, so they have no accountability, which is a dodge, and it's weak. But it also makes them weak. I've been dealing with anonymous trolls for years now, and I'm going to anonymized. We're going to drag some of them out into the light very soon. Side topic. Okay, looks like we got a good number in here already. I think about 5 more minutes and the other notification will go out. We did get our other channel stricken down because of medical misinformation or illegal opinions or something. Don't care. If you get a channel taken down because of something you say on the phones, it will not be held against you. In fact, it's a badge of honor in a way, because we're testing the boundaries here. The whole question of where's the edge is irrelevant to me. It's a worldview thing, and for me it's about where's the edge of it, the edge of acceptable discourse. Shout out to Mark. Thank you very much. He says, thank you for the peace of mind. Hope this can help you with the book tour. Absolutely. So the objective now is, and if you're waiting on Autohoaxology 101, it's going to be arriving here shortly. I'm making some things happen, but one of the projects for 2024 is going to a few different places to distribute this book for maximum impact. And Autohoaxology 101 is a raft on the sea of irrelevance. It really is. And most of you here already know what that means. You're already inoculated. Mind war inoculated, that is. You don't catch any of the mind viruses, which makes them mad. Because you're supposed to have maids, so you're susceptible to their programming without any sort of mental immune system. And if you don't know what maids is, you can read about it on the Autohoaxology 101 glossary. Just go to the blog. Okay, so the phones are open. If someone wants to call in and interrupt, that's totally fine. At any point here, I'm not in a particular rush to get through this review. Again, I'm not offering spoilers on a movie. I'm offering spoilers on reality, because what they're going to do is set the stage for the next psyop using the movies, Netflix in particular. And the fact that you have President Obama and Michelle Obama here at the front of this particular movie is extremely pertinent. So let's continue. From the beginning of Leave the World Behind, there's references to the final episode, the season finale of Friends, the last one. Now, there's something that is said in the beginning where she's asking her mom if they can go visit the cafe from Friends, and she's told it's just a movie set, which is kind of interesting, and I think it has a double meaning. Like, there's another conversation where the mother is talking to the other main character and just says something about how what we live in, because they're talking about the internet and having to deal with it not being there. And she said this reality is mostly an agreed upon mass delusion that is necessary because of how awful we are. And if you take those statements together, it's just a movie set. And this mass delusion, this agreed upon delusion, is necessary because of how awful we are. That gives you right there the explanation and justification for the psychological war anyway. That is, if they're using psychological warfare to subjugate us so we don't actually have to go out and kill each other, we can do all the war through the culture wars and through the mind war and through psyops, then that is more humane. And maybe it is necessary. That's the basis for the whole idea of using the terror of gods and superstition to control the unruly mobs. I mean, this is just how the elite have always looked at the masses. In fact, there's the explanation. People say, why? What's the big explanation behind all of it? What's the big meaning to all these different fake events? And I think ultimately it's a form of exercising power. Instrumentum regni, instrument of monarchy, expressed by Tacitus. And the concept is basically this. He says, superstition maintains the cohesion of the Roman state. And what he's referring to is this. The multitude is fickle, full of lawless desires, unreasoned passion, and violent anger. The multitude must be held in by invisible terrors and pageantry. For this reason, I think it's not rash that the ancients acted in introducing among the people notions concerning gods and the terrors of hell, and the moderns are rash in banning these beliefs. So it makes sense to keep everybody superstitious so they can be controlled. And I don't think that the moderns have abandoned these beliefs. They've replaced them. They've replaced them all. And we talk about this all the time, about global warming being the new flood myth. And it's for what purpose? To control people, to regulate them. And it's still being done. It's weaponized superstition. And that's why I consider much of the what people consider to be tragic events and terror attacks. I consider these to be more or less contemporary myths. Okay, continuing from the beginning of Leave the World Behind, there's references to the Friends, and so of course there's a connection with Matthew Perry and Julia Roberts. And of course, Matthew Perry made some cryptic Instagram posts before he died, submersed in his pool. There were some Batman references. And of course, at the beginning of the show, he's spitting water out because they're dancing in the fountain. So there's some kind of a flood reference. And the movie does make a reference to a flood. In fact, it's broken into parts. And one of the parts is called the flood. So there is something there that, not quite sure yet, but there's something here. It's very 9/11-y, as you'll see. The brother wears the shirt that says Obey, which is a clothing company. It's got Andre the Giant's face, designed by Frank Shepard, who did the iconic Obama Hope poster. And this is a big clue because it suggests that Obama is he's present in this sense because he's a producer, but then this is another connection, and it's the word obey. And as you'll see throughout the movie, the subtext is actually told in the t-shirts. For example, the father's wearing Bikini Kill. And even before I watched the movie, someone had pointed out, hey, Bikini Kill could be a reference to the atomic bomb tests at Bikini Island. This is before you watched it. So having watched it, there's a scene where he's standing there with this Bikini Kill shirt, and someone else infers that, or says that, your son could sleep through an atomic bomb. So they make that connection quite solidly there. Now there's a scene, of course, where the girl's wearing this NASA shirt, and it's constantly like really just in your face that she's wearing a NASA shirt. And next to her is her brother who's wearing the Obey. So it's Obey NASA. And I'm thinking, okay, what's this about? And it gets clearer as we go on. But the NASA shirt adds another level of meaning to leaving the world behind, because the world's going to be destroyed by this catastrophe of climate change, of which, climate change is also symbolized by the oil tanker that hits the beach. It's capitalism, it's fossil fuels. But anyway, as it turns out, she's the one wearing this NASA shirt, thinking ahead, leaving the world behind. She's heeding the signs, but she has Cassandra syndrome. Her warnings are being ignored. Cassandra comes from Greek mythology, and she sees the future, but nobody believes her. So in the scene where the ship's coming in, the oil tanker, she's saying, the ship's coming in, and nobody's getting up, nobody's panicking. It's kind of surreal for her. And then it hits. And of course, that's the ship called White Lion, which ties into the 1619 project. There are frequent shots of a map that shows the United States drawn and quartered, like it's in four pieces. There's been X through it. It almost looks like a radiation sign or a hazard sign. It's just kind of ominously divided with this red, this scarlet. Again, it looks like America butchered. Now, the address for the house is 11963. It's in Sag Harbor, or it's got the zip code 11963, Sag Harbor. So they show this number a bit. So the number contains 1963, which is Kennedy's assassination year, contains 119, which has even more significance. And 96 shows up in a lot of places. And of course, you can find within this the 1619, which shows up later. But the things that they show here, like for example, the white characters are renting the house that it's owned by this black character. And Julia Roberts' character shows a lot of resentment towards having to share the house with them. And she wonders aloud if her daughter's even safe. So there's this kind of like, it's not even subliminal. There's this like racist overtones here that she's just kind of conveying. And it's made more evident later. But what I think this suggests is that it suggests something about the resentment of racists in America towards the Obamas in the White House. Like, this is definitely what it's pointing at. And if you, as we'll go through, you'll see, it really does point back to this. So, leaving the world behind, she's the one who sees the signs. Nobody believes her. She says the ship's coming in, which again, this refers to the oil tanker. Again, it refers to fossil fuels, capitalism, climate change. She's like Greta. She's of the Greta generation. So her parents are oblivious to the problems that their generation created for hers. There's a movie called American Blackout, which came out in 2013, which uses footage of then President Obama, who asks the citizens to, quote, stay calm and listen to public officials. In other words, obey. The father and son are both portrayed as racist, misogynistic, incompetent, shallow, superfluous Ken dolls with no survival instinct. Meanwhile, the girl has intuition and makes it to a bunker. Her brother mocks her, gaslights her, takes nothing serious, doesn't pay any attention to her, and the father admits, at a very crucial moment, that he is, quote, useless without the internet. So there's kind of a critique here, I think. There's a critique right now of America in the 2020s that's being conveyed in this film. And it's pretty denigrating, but there's more here. Because, see, the father flags down, or he's flagged down by a panicked woman who can only speak Spanish. And since the internet's down and everything's, the communication's down, they can't talk. And this is connected to the Tower of Babel falling, which is what the internet represents in a large part. The space program, the internet, the one worldism of everything, the unification where we're all connected. Well, when that breaks, you have the scattering of tongues. So she cannot communicate her needs to him, and he abandons her. It's pretty clear that this is another meaning to the 119, of course. And the numbers do tell the story as well as the t-shirts. Now, I went back and I looked at the book, and the book had a number of reviews, and it makes it pretty clear that this subtext is the dominant theme. For example, when the mother, Amanda, thinks, quote, those people didn't look like the sort to own such a beautiful house, she reveals a glimpse of her white supremacy. And then the author named G.H. after a white man who owned slaves. So the white characters are insinuated to be racist, and the mother's discomfort with sharing the home is made clear, and she puts them in the basement. She makes a comment about the girl's hair when they're at the swimming pool. Then you have the survivalist with the American flag, and I happen to think that the survivalist character represents white nationalists who knew because he's part of it. He was preparing in advance. And they know because they're going to take advantage of the chaos. That was kind of what I gathered. And he seemed to use, he referred to the Koreans and Chinese interchangeably. And that was, again, an indication here of his racism. It's just pretty evident. There's an American flag behind him. I mean, these white characters are just shown in a certain way. The son taking pictures of the black girl at the pool, he's totally pervy. They're shown as unsophisticated and just culturally insensitive. It's pretty shocking. But I'm not going to read the entire review, but there's a couple other points here, like subtle things. In the background, there's a TV screen, and it has the fans in the stadium doing the Cleveland Chop. And if you remember, there was controversy about the Cleveland Chop. Is it racist? Is it against the indigenous? So there's that in the background. And the father makes some kind of comment about how the Mesoamerican indigenous people believe that seeing a deer was good luck. Some trite kind of comment while that chopping is going on. And this is likely tying in to the recent controversy the last week or so of the 9-year-old wearing blackface with the feathered headdress. Now, it was black and red in his defense. It later came out, but they created this Chiefs fan in blackface and native headdress controversy. So this is not inconsistent because generally when you have these big productions come out, the news is going to have corresponding related items connected to it. And this again ties in to the whole 1619 project and being more inclusive about the real history of America going back before 1776. And again, it's coming from the left. It's coming from Obama. And here's what clued me into the 1619 in addition to the ship, the radio station 1619. And the reason why this is so significant, of course, is part of the concept of the movie was following a collapse, the existing tensions would be exacerbated and the sides would go after one another. And it's pretty clear that the 1619 and the 1776 dialectic would represent the critical race theory versus Western chauvinism. So this is racial identity politics, and this is part of the strategy as it's explained at the end So the elite set up a civil war and let the people fight it out among themselves. And they want the 1776ers, who would be the January Sixers, 1776ers, to fight the 1619 crowd. Again, here, the 1619 landing, Virginia's first Africans report. August 1619, enslaved Africans landed in Hampton, Virginia. And here's a picture of Colin Kaepernick hanging out with Spike Lee, director Spike Lee. And Spike Lee has the 1619 on his headdress. And this is all very significant when you look at the role of Kaepernick, who interestingly was quarterback during the Blackout Bowl in 2013. So the blackout reference again. And the 1619 thing ties into the whole theme of Black Lives Matter and some of his activism. And you could argue that he's somewhat the titular head of BLM. And moreover, he's the one who started the kneeling before Derek Chauvin and then before BLM picked it up. And it was always, again, having to do with the police, who in this is all narrative, but the idea is the police represent the propertied class and they're the oppressors, and their neck is their knee is on the neck of the poor. And so this is, again, very interesting symbolism that they put that in the movie. Here's a few other details. There's mention made of a winter solstice by someone who ominously says, "Take care of yourself." And there's a 1222 on a car. So winter solstice, just heads up. And then of course, the address has the zip code 11963. 1963, JFK is shot. 119, Donnie Darko's release. The significance here is the Donnie Darko movie was directed by the son of a NASA employee who helped direct the Viking Mars rover movies. Kind of fascinating. Mars movies, his son does Hollywood. But Donnie Darko contained 9/11 predictive programming and had planes falling from the sky. This movie has all the same, as you'll see. The girl, Rose, is compared to Donnie Darko. 119, Genesis, Fall of the Tower of Babel. And falling planes are a huge part of the narrative, as with Donnie Darko, and this connects to the 9/11 symbolism, which is inherent in one of the beginning scenes when the father and mother are playing Jenga, which is the falling tower game. And the Jenga tower falls as the scene transitions from one where a drone, which sounds like a jet coming down. So you hear this airplane, it sounds like, while the tower is about to fall. And the drone is dropping leaflets that say, "Death to America," written in Arabic. Then the tower falls. So there's like a little 9/11 scene played out there in the very beginning. Then you have this ominous shot of the American flag on the moon, as seen from the moon. And then in the background there's Earth, which eclipses the sun, creating a corona, which is a repeated symbol throughout Donnie Darko. Then you have this scene where the Tesla cars figure prominently in the shutting down of everything. These automatic cars go maximum overdrive, but they have a 116 prominently displayed, and that's their fuel efficiency or something. But the point of it is 116, this number is consistently used in conjunction with the domestic violent extremist nuke attack on America. In Batman, Gotham is underwater on 116. 611, Timothy McVeigh's execution date. There's the armor of God the white nationalists and far right use, has to do with some 611 verse. Tim Ballard from Save the Children had a 611 on his pendant. So this was Timothy McVeigh's execution date, very significant. Oppenheimer's IMAX film about the nuke has an 11.6. 11 miles long, 600 pounds. And then he's wearing a K6 badge, 11.6. My point is, and there's dozens of these, there are many references to 116, specifically relating to a white nationalist attack on our power grid. And to add to this, it's the Teslas that are referenced here. And you can look at Elon Musk's role right now in this particular ongoing psychological operation. Now again, I don't know the 96, what it means, but it was shown too many times to be meaningless. The ship crashing, again, represents the ship of state. And I think that's pretty much it. But the main thing here is that the movie has a meaning here, a Civil War subtext, and it largely has to do with capitalism versus something that's sustainable, and then it has all the different layers to it, specifically the racial thing and the world, of course, rather the nation or the history of America beginning prior to 1776. But it's all there, and the fact that there's an Obama behind it kind of tells you that there's no way this isn't an accurate reading of it. And if you watch it, it's pretty grotesque. I mean, it's a great movie. It's really well done. I'm just saying that the way the characters are portrayed is pretty grotesque. That's just the negative stereotyping. Okay, phones are open. If you want to go ahead and call in, I'm opening them up right now. 505 349 0420. Flatlander says, you really put a lot into this. Wow, thank you. Others have also, in our Gilded chat, contributed to this. And so that's one reason to join InfinitePlaneSociety.com. We have a lot of researchers. Thank you, Diana South. We at the IPS appreciate the support. So let me see what Spirit wrote here. Okay, Ethan represents a useless man who cannot do anything without a phone or a GPS, a soy boy. Yeah, good call there. The Prepper says Russia knew it was coming and withdrew its diplomats. Mentions the culprits, China, North Korea, maybe Iran. Mushroom Cloud in New York. Oh, interesting. At 2:10:13, the art on the wall says, Hope begins in the dark. I didn't catch that. I did see a lot of eyes. I mean, the artwork tells a lot, too. Fascinating. He says here, this is again from Spirit Jordan. He says they quote Anil Schwab, and that's a reference to the World Economic Forum. There's no going back to normal. Interesting. Okay, continuing. The Tesla sticker shows economy at 116. Yep, exactly. And then, of course, he references this is so much here that they have some overlap, but I'm going to go through all of this and I'll probably update the blog. But I did watch it last night, and I kind of rewatched it today, and I was doing some Googling, and then I came across the interpretation of the White Lion. I mean, it's so layered. The ship of state, like a Titanic, and the little girl, like Greta, warning, hey, climate catastrophe is coming. Nobody's paying attention because they're on vacation. They're just blindly going along as consumers. And not only does it hit us and it ties into climate change because it's oil and it ties into capitalism, but the White Lion reference also has a bigger critique which would tie in and implicate the entire West. And there's more, because the house that they're fighting over, I think, represents the White House. And I also get the idea that the West itself sinking is kind of implied here, that it's all tied in to what we've been saying, that it's like because of the sins of the past, the America's original sin, and that these are all going to be played upon. And that would be very consistent. Again, that's why I put this in the title. Okay, let's go through my minds.com. I know I have other stuff as well. And I took a lot of screen grabs because the visuals give a lot of it away. Like when the main character wakes up for some reason, there's like a 666. Like on the side of his bed, his clock's on a 6. And then and I have it here. But there's also, I think more interestingly, there's an obvious crack on the wall above his head. Here, I found it. Canadian Prepper says, I almost spit out my coffee when I saw this. It's so blatant. So there's a 6 on a clock. There's a 6 shape on a mug. And then there's another 6. But I think it's more pertinent. There's a crack, like a lightning bolt pointed down at him. Fascinating symbolism, though. And here the 1776 on the mug would be the counter to the 1619. And he epitomizes, like what the other commenter said, the soy boy, the one who can't do anything without the assistance of the internet, the state. Okay, I'm scrolling through my comments. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Last night's live stream kind of got lost. I'll try to recover it, but basically I have to do some reformatting. It was just too large of a file for me to edit on the program. Anyway, there was an interview today, or a conversation that I caught. It was on It was with Alex Jones, who just got back on X, and Elon Musk, Andrew Tate, and Vivek Ramaswamy. I listened to it so you don't have to. I can sum it up for you. Alex Jones basically said, fight the globalists. Elon Musk, spelled with a Q, Elon Musk basically said, have more babies. It's the extinctionists versus the pro humans. And Andrew Tate made the case that we must seize technology before the liberals do, especially before they bring out the Robocops. So that's pretty much it. Copaesthetic says Kevin Bacon wearing a Dallas Cowboys hat. Interesting. DC. Derek Chauvin. The DC has been popping up in a few things. But yes, he was the one who I think may represent an insider. Lean Dion says it's the young girl's character, Arya Stark, who kills the Winter's Coming Night King in Game of Thrones. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, there's a fascinating connection because Game of Thrones is about the West burning. It's about this medieval thing with these various families and kingdoms competing, but ultimately Westeros is the West. And when Westeros burns, it's the dragons, which could represent China and space lasers, Chinese space lasers. But anyway, it's the Westeros is burning, and the whole theme, winter is coming, I think is a reference to nuclear winter. So when the snow comes down, it comes down along with the ashes of the West, or Westeros. And of course, there's all kinds of connections between the House of Stark and Iron Man and the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne, Iron Man, Tony Stark connects to Elon Musk, who's taking us to Mars, which, if you look at the symbolism, Mars is associated with iron. And we're entering the age of Mars. Before we do, the present age has to be, burned down. But yeah, fascinating catch there with Kevin Bacon wearing the cowboy hat. Diana South says, I agree with having more babies. Now that I'm old, I wish I would have had 12 instead of 1. It's interesting how one side says we're running out of babies, and the other side says bash your babies' heads against the rocks and enter a Barbie land. And, I was thinking about this today, too, or how we have this comparison between, Barbie and Oppenheimer. They said Barbieheimer. And we had correlated it with the nuke is the beast and Barbie's Babylon, the horror of Babylon. And later, the Godzilla movie comes out, which is a metaphor for the nuclear weapons. And it actually beats Oppenheimer. So now the two top movies would be Barbie and Godzilla, another nuke replacement. But again, it's Barbie, it's Babylon and the Beast. So I'm looking at this, but it's interesting how this is all perfectly split in terms of the messaging. So the Barbie movie is girls killing their baby dolls and only associating with superfluous castrated Ken doll men and living as empowered single women buying a bunch of stuff. That was the message of the movie. The destruction of the nuclear family, and then again the reference to the nuke. But then the Godzilla movie is the opposite, where it's these scattered individuals after a war trying to piece back together a family, try to rebuild their nuclear family, trying to assemble mother, father, take care of this orphan, and then his friends are saying, hey, you better marry her and then make this official because we care about the future. So it's fascinating how it's opposite messaging from both sides. And of course, Barbie, the left, Barbie feminism, and of course, the bomb and the right. There's just this dialectic they set up that's evident in all of the movies. Echo Charlie says, did you see the comment that Bikini Kill is a rock band? Yeah, I knew Bikini Kill was a rock band. I meant to listen to them. I'm pretty sure I've heard some of their music. Yeah, actually, I had gone back and listened to it when I first saw it. And it's that girl band. And here we go here. But just the fact that bikini is brought up is a reference to Bikini Island and, of course, the atomic bomb tests. And it ties into the bombshell. Like the idea of the bikini bombshell is intertwined with the atomic bomb tests. And this is another connection between, of course, Barbie and Oppenheimer, or Barbie and the Beast. It's intriguing when you get into it because this is all narrative and story, but it's got so many layers. Like, it's not a coincidence that after Maui was roasted by Godzilla, or whatever happened, they had to spray pink soil tackifier on the affected areas. It's just kind of, if you follow it, it just seems like it's more story than reality. Jay Digg says Obama's production company is Higher Ground, and their logo looks like a stairway to heaven. 19 steps, as though you're looking for a flood. Yeah, I have your comment here from Gilded, and this is all really interesting too. Higher ground, leave the world behind. The idea of the flood, the symbolism of the like the space arc or the space needle, the idea of elevation, the Noah's Ark, and the Noah's Ark was recently in the news because of the third person in line for the presidency believes that it literally existed and is also occupied by dinosaurs, and presumably, well, I don't know, I'd have to. Actually, I was looking into this. Sharks pre-existed dinosaurs. I'm just wondering what happened to the dinosaurs if they were on the ark. But this ark theme is just a consistent theme. It's the same thing as a bunker or the space ark concept. But the idea here is that when there's a reset, you have the chosen ones who are selected to survive. I mean, the ark is not a good story. I mean, Noah's flood is a terrible story if you really look at it. But it's been brought back in the modern era with climate change and global warming. And what is the main theme of this movie? Global warming, climate change, or main subtext, capitalism being brought down because of what it's doing to Gaia. It's like Gaia's revenge, which is suggested with the weird way the animals are acting. J. Dick says that map was upside down as well. Yeah, they showed the map several times, and one of the times, and I have it highlighted on my blog, it was upside down. I find this fascinating that the children are wearing Obey NASA side by side, which would kind of reiterate the messaging of don't look up, which is if we don't obey NASA, we're all going to die. And of course, she's the one who is ignored and she's trying to warn everybody. And I really want to emphasize this. 10 years ago, Barack Obama was in a National Geographic movie that came out on the anniversary of the superstorm Sandy. And the movie is called American Blackout. And it was the same year as the Blackout Bowl, Super Bowl 47, which I think correlates to the presidency for the number 47. And we can get into that because the 47 stuff, Derek Chauvin, D.C., getting slashed at 47, stabbed rather, 22 times. After player 47 gets slashed. I mean, it's pretty deep when you get into this because it's all a build-up. But in this movie, Barack Obama, as president, is basically saying, yeah, basically everything's been shut down, obey the authorities. And here's the image of the American flag, or America, the map of America, upside down and drawn and quartered and bloody. Everything about this says Civil War. And there's a couple other things. He describes this, he said one character describes it's a coup d'etat, followed by civil war, and then collapse. CCC. And someone pointed out that it's interesting that Trump is going to be in Vegas this month to watch, was it Colby Chaos Covington? So there's again, nothing in here is insignificant. The fact that the 1619 is only shown on the radio for half a second, I mean, it took me a few minutes to get a screen grab because they barely even throw it on the screen. And yet it's one of the primary messages next to the very obvious white lion. The movie deserves a second watch. I'm pretty sure I'm glossing over a ton of things, but I wanted to get the main point out that the subtext here is like Turner Diaries, Helter Skelter, Race War 1776 versus 1619 at the end of some kind of a societal collapse. And that's the whole, it's pretty dismal if you think about it. Like for all we know, and I'm not a doomer, I'm not a doom boofer, but for all we know, generations of psyops could have been necessary to put everybody mentally in a position for it all to go, quote, kinetic, and for people to actually leave their homes and actually do something in the real world. I just don't think that's the case. I think the fear of the threat is the real power that the elite wield, in addition to their power of faking reality. If they really do it, it's done, it's over, and I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. Like the aliens are never going to invade. It's a fake rapture story to keep you in a perpetual end times. If they end it, their power ends. It's more about the cycle. Lord Laney says, bikini seems like a Crowley-style abracadabra word magic. Well, Bikini Islands and the atomic bomb testing is the reference, and then later they associated the swimsuit with bombshell as a metaphor for women in bikinis, which all does correlate to the symbolism of Barbie and the association with the movie Oppenheimer, which all connects fascinatingly with the Jack Parsons story, who was blown up by a bomb. And he was the central figure. He was the beast to Marjorie Cameron, who played the Babylon. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, now let's move on to my comments. So I have a number of things I want to get through on the movie. I have a few other screen grabs. Oh, this is a nice one, though. Just side note, we're talking about mind control and trauma-induced mind control, generational Stockholm syndrome, generations of psyops. One generation's ducking and covering because of nukes, the next is doing it because of mass shooters. Look, New York students face up to 60 active shooter drills before graduating. An 18-year-old graduates with 16 of these drills in their system. Now, what does this do? These are called lockdowns, which is a jail term. And look, I pointed this out with a documentary called Drilled that we put on BitChute a few years ago. And after we put this out, a couple of teachers' unions changed their tone on drills. I'm not taking credit for it, but they look really bad. And look what they're now admitting. Quote, "We know lockdown drills are marginally effective, but create deep trauma." State senator says this. 60 drills. And what I'm pointing out here is that the trauma is intentional. It's designed, this is MK Ultra. Not only does it traumatize them and it creates a toxic bond with their rescuers, Stockholm syndrome, but it also convinces them that the threat is real. It's just like the movie The Village, where they do drills. P. Trippa, appreciate it. He says, coffee for a good weekend back. Yeah, hey, thank you very much. So there's a bill out right now, and it says, for the sake of our kids' mental health. Now, wouldn't that be ironic? Look, students from New York say they have emotional scars from the drills. Wouldn't that be ironic if the drills emotionally scarred the children, gave them mental illness, so then they picked up guns and shot up schools because they were mentally ill? Like, I think that's what they're doing. I mean, it's an endless cycle. And for those people who say it's wrong of you to criticize these fake events, I have to say it's wrong of you to lend your tacit approval to the mass traumatizing of the youth of this country. I mean, of the world. I mean, it's pretty sick. You want to sign off on that? You're a terrorist, basically an abuser of children, of students. I would not want to be on that side of this issue. And so when I criticize fake shooting after fake shooting, I do so knowing that I'm on the right side of things. Like, I'm not on the side of let's just carry these traumatizing narratives. Let's perpetuate these myths. Yeah, there are monsters in the woods. You shouldn't leave at night. I don't have any fake blood on my hands. And anybody still carrying around one of these false flag theories has a bunch of fake blood on their hands, and they're showing it off like some kind of a good guy badge, virtue signal. And I'm like, nope, that's not virtue signaling. You're carrying fake blood for the MSM and you're not getting paid. I don't respect unpaid crisis actors. I actually respect crisis actors. They're my favorite kind of actors in many ways. I spend more time with them, but unpaid ones, media advocates, no, not so much. Oh, by the way, here we go. Here it is. The speech I gave, the 1 minute speech I had at the Albuquerque City Council, about the space station being underwater. It went onto a channel called Toon World Spell on TikTok. And I haven't been active on TikTok. They kind of made me mad when they pulled down our South Pole cartoon where Candace Owens and Ye were doing a deal with the Pillow Man to make clan hoods with a swastika on it for Ye's clothing line, White Lives Matter. I mean, we thought it was funny, but TikTok did not. But anyway, someone else put that video on TikTok, 211,000 views for a channel that only has 1,600 followers. And then today, Stu Peters, who wouldn't have done this if he knew who it was. I mean, I coined nicknamed Ghoul Peters for his take on the clots. But anyway, this one he put up today, 154,000 views. So between the two, we've crossed 350. And if you haven't heard it, this is where I was just drawing the attention to the city council here to the fact that a lot of money is being wasted on a simulated space station.
Imagine if the federal government gave $19.5 billion to Hollywood. I think we'd all be pretty upset by this. There is a growing body of evidence that the International Space Station is not in outer space, but it's being filmed in a desalinated pool down here on Earth, and it's being falsely misrepresented. Started with this phenomenon known as bubbles in space. If you search for it, you'll see many of these so-called spacewalks, which have been...
Now, a couple of things about this. Bubbles in space was a solid Achilles heel, but they found a way to deny it. You know, because for them, 2 + 2 is 5 if Big Brother says so. And Big Brother says, no, those are space bubbles. They're natural occurring. It's like dust. Like they make something up. So now bubbles in space aren't bubbles in space. So they move the goalpost. Not a big deal, because the new one that they're not going to be ready for is the lighting. And I've been talking about this. Light loss. The light loss shows that the spacewalks are underwater. Now, what's interesting, and this is funny, what's interesting about it is, as soon as I started talking about this, USA Today puts out an article that no, the space station is not underwater, but there is a neutral buoyancy lab training facility in Texas somewhere. So I'm like thinking, wait, why are they suddenly confronting this? And then it starts going viral here, and I'm thinking, this is definitely a weak spot for them. It's definitely a weak spot, and the light loss is something that they won't be able to do away with, if you ask me. But what's even better is this. I have been planning, as most of you here know, on the first IPS Cyber Symposium targeting the ISS. This has been the plan. I've been writing it out and getting my arguments together. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could just use AI to provide me all the clips that I need to do a concise takedown and breakdown of the ISS? And now that I'm looking at it, I have the hive mind working on my behalf, because I'm going through Stu Peters' post here with 150K hits, and most of the videos are people responding with their own videos. Most people here are actually agreeing with me. And I scrolled through it, and for the most part, and he's correct, I agree, too much is not adding up. And I was just diving through the comments, there's hundreds of them, but many of them are videos. So in other words, there's a lot of research that's being provided that I'm going to use in this cyber symposium. Are there any pictures of the ISS being built? Let's see here. The Earth, yeah, that's right. The Earth has been created in a way to keep you here. Everything we've been fed since kindergarten is bogus. Let's see what else. It's a distraction from the heinous acts on Earth. Would not surprise me. Now, there are some people who say you can see it with a telescope. Now, this one's pretty good. So this looks like an image of the space station crossing the moon. And I have an argument against this, by the way. I will not accept any ISS transits that are, I just won't. And if they're in front of the moon or sun, I just won't. And there's a few reasons why. The main reason is it takes the human observer out of it. When you're looking at a transit, you're looking through a filter. You're looking through, you're not looking at what your human eyes could see. And so it's actually, it's fakeable. There's room there for a sleight of mind. Anyway, he zooms in and it says, something the size of a football field from 253 miles away is impossible to see. The ISS is fake. Yeah, I think they made it too large when they do these transits. Like they pass around the same file and all the fakers use the same file. I think it's too big for something that's that many miles away. Planet Ship says NASA is also the largest user of helium as well, aka balloon satellites. Helium's low density means it can be used for lighter than aircraft like balloons and airships. They say it's a clearing gas, but we know why they really use it. Okay, let's see what else. You can literally look up and see it. I mean, you can do it yourself. Go to a tracker website. It'll tell you when, and then look up. You know what they all say? They all say, you can see it. Just get the app. They always shift it to you. And I always call them out. They're going to say, you can go see it. Just look at the app. I say, have you seen it? And 100% of the time, the answer is no. There's so many people who used to play this with, they say, hey, you can just go see it. You know that, right? And I'm like, have you? And their answer is like, no. And I'm like, well, then how can you insist that that's evidence if you haven't done it? And I called out McToon on this. McToon himself has not seen the ISS. He's like, you can just go out and see it. It's so easy. Then go do it. Okay, phones are back open. I think someone just tried to call. If you want to try again, the number's on the screen. Guarantee this person has not seen it. Okay, and Political Tunes says, in 2015, I spent hours watching videos, a 30-hour live stream. I saw unexpected elements, green screen fails, floppy doors, reflections. Fascinating. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, good evening, Tim. This is IPS correspondent Pete Tripper. How you doing tonight?
Hey, thanks for the coffee.
Hey, you're welcome. Happy Sunday evening. I actually have a quick rabbit hole to climb in or out of tonight, and it's completely original. I just want to work it through with you, and I think it'll be a really good value add. It's something that it's tied to stuff that's going on in the Middle East, and then possibly Elon Musk, possibly just the way movies are filmed and video games. I'm just all over the place. But I think I can sew it all together pretty nicely if you'll let me go.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, please.
It's actually pretty cool. All right, cool. So I noticed in some of the footage that they're showing in the news. Well, I don't watch the news a lot, but some of the news that they've been giving us from militants in Hamas, and anyone that's listening tonight, you can do an internet search of Hamas first person view. And for some reason that's a thing now. And and I'm just going to pause right here and just kind of take you on this road with me, because I was like, why are they showing us the first person view, or how are they showing us a first person view of Hamas militants? It makes no sense. It's almost worse. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but it's it's not just the news propping up a camera on a tripod next to the battlefield and recording. It's actually a guy wearing a GoPro, and this is a lot. And I'm not just saying it's 5 guys. It's as if they purchased from GoPro or actioncamera.com or something, a box of thousands of these cameras, and they're all wearing them. So it's very easy to find these I'll just go ahead, take a step ahead and say there's body cams. And I thought to myself, I'm wait a second, where have I heard this before? Where am I seeing this before? And I don't know if it was during the Obama years. There was remember there was stuff happening between, there was racial tensions, once again, and the president vowed that he would make sure that we would have more body cams so that could be I remember that being a thing.
Yeah.
During his presidency
Trayvon,
for a while. And
if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Then you had Michael Brown.
Yeah.
And that was specifically a thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, this is why I'm bringing it up with you, because you're gonna bring up a lot more stuff than me, because I can only do so much. But so I started thinking to myself, I'm why or where have I really found or seen first person shooter kind of viewpoints? I'm all right, video games, movies, great. This is IPS's wheelhouse. You're focused on the present course of media and where it's going. Well, I do retro auto hoaxing a little bit more, and I think that I thought back about where and when there were the real first-person shooters, where they came about, and I'm sure someone there's some people of a certain age that probably remember old Wild West arcade games in the '60s. So I did a little research, and I'm I don't even know that stuff, but I'm sure they were around. But I remember Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, like video games like Quake. It was like GoldenEye, N64. Like you know what I mean? There's like a ton. There's so many. I mean, Call of Duty is another big one.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
I don't really
okay.
play video games anymore.
A recent
But
one.
another one is like Fallout 4, Fallout 3. Those are like first-person shooters. And, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're nailing it because yeah, I was going to mention that one, but also more recently, it just so happened to be coincidental, I suppose, that Modern Warfare 3 was released on the evening of the evening prior to the Israel-Hamas kicking off. So you had millions of people
Okay.
tuned in to
Yes.
first-person shooter point of view when this thing happened. So they're already like conflating the video game with the news reality, and I think it's part of opening
Oh
the
my
Overton
gosh.
window. But yeah, there's definitely a correlation here.
Oh, this is great. This is going to be like later on in the conversation because I that's exactly what I was thinking too. But for with regards to other things, and I'll kind of lead into it. But I wanted you to know first before we go there is there's a couple of cool things that I found when I went down this rabbit hole, and it's that first person video gaming was essentially created by NASA, which is like really messed up to say because when I found out about this, they were NASA scientists, quote unquote, trying to research computational fluid dynamics for future spacecraft designs, and that led to essentially games or training modules for military, like such as like army professionals or it's not army like army personnel. I don't know how you want to say it, but like men and women in the military to save money, Tim, they would, like save bullets, to like they would, instead of training live fire and like reloading and so on and so forth, aiming, they would prepare them by, training them. And I kind of like, I thought about it. I was like, I used to be at Raytheon and they kind of like, they do that too for like other things, like with regards to like radar or, the Patriot missile and stuff like that. Like they kind of like, they prepare them to, there's
Simulation.
a system in the public. Yeah, there's like a system in the public domain that anyone can research. It's the BMC-4I like radar system that activates the Patriot missile and all that stuff. But it's essentially controlled by a video game, which is kind of interesting. And it's a man or woman behind like in a cockpit, sort of like a headquarters, basically like a truck, and they can control remotely. It's kind of like I'm sure there's men and women that like control drones, kind of like that. So anyways, I don't know, is there anything you wanted to say about that stuff before I move on? Because I have other stuff that's unrelated but related. And
No,
but no, I have more like to
sure.
build off of that. But I don't know if because I know you were in the military, so.
Well, one thing, yeah, military, everything is simulation. Everything is drilled and drilled and
Hmm.
drilled, and
Hmm.
that's just like what you do all the time. Everything's simulation. Everything is an exercise, and
Yeah.
it's all rehearsals. But the other thing is the first-person shooter phenomenon is fascinating because if you look at
Hmm.
it, most games where people are immersed in a simulated environment, sitting in their basements or whatever, is either it's a first-person shooter or it's like outer space travel. So there's a lot of like programming for space travel as just a given, and then the mass shooting
Oh
thing.
my gosh.
Like when I heard about what's his name, the Sandy thing, I was like, there's no way that little thing kicked down a door and killed that many people with that many headshots. But I was realizing it's totally believable to people who've played video games their entire lives. So that's what I was going to say. The video games is a huge part of programming.
Right. So your in your wheelhouse is like media, so I think that's the video games is part of that. Now the movies aspect of it or shows, that's a whole other thing. Now there's parts of movies like The Matrix where there's like kind of like scenes where you're in like the first person view of say like Neo, for instance. But there's movies like Cloverfield, which is like a huge one, the Blair Witch Project I've brought up on here before. The Halloween movies, Friday the 13th, a lot of like horror movies, which kind of makes sense. But there are like other movies that are like completely filmed in like first person view, which I thought was like something, maybe to bring or to track like as time goes on with you as well.
Okay,
but
wait, that one's
I
good
guess
though. Matrix.
I'll,
Matrix
I'll kind of
using
stop with you.
because
Yeah,
Matrix was like first person point of view. If they were one of the first ones to do it,
yeah, it was
that
just an example.
but that's a good one because that movie came out just before the Littleton shooting, and they were dressed like characters from
Yeah,
The Matrix.
yes.
So there's a kind of a tie in there. But yeah, please continue.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Being John Malkovich, when I was growing up, there's like, I mean, you can that movie Gravity, another one that's some of that was shot in like first person view. Um, I don't know. It's almost like it's just weird how like once I discovered one thing, and like other things kind of popped up. So, but one thing, did you? So I didn't see Oppenheimer, but did you saw Oppenheimer, right?
Yes, yes, I did watch it.
Okay. What what was the so from what I've read is that it was written by Christopher Nolan in the first person view. Is that was that how the movie was shot as well, or
I'll have to think about that for a minute here, and see if that is the case. But
okay?
go on.
Well, but anyways, I think you brought up with other people calling in too that like sometimes like the director changes like kind of like the final product of the film like a little different from the way it's written. And in this case, I happened to stumble upon that the Oppenheimer movie, although I think it was taken from a book, the book Oppenheimer, which I also have not read, so I'm not a professional here speaking. I'm just kind of like doing a little rabbit hole digging. And evidently, the way the movie script was written was in the first person, so which I thought was interesting. Um, as like a side comment, and where do I think all this is going? Well, I of course I don't truly know. However, there's some tie-ins to artificial intelligence and Elon Musk's Neuralink, which there's like in the past there's been Google Glass and all this other stuff, and I think the war or all these first-person shooter video games and movies are kind of like preparing us. Like I don't know I don't know what like the next step would be like what hook us up to something even more three-dimensional where we're just sitting on our butts,
That's
and just kind of like
where is it progressing? I mean, I've been pointing it out that it's like post 9/11, they can now see through your clothes using these scanners, and they can palpate you in case you're carrying something. So now they're invading your privacy a
yeah.
little bit. 19 years later, now they can know what's in your have to know what's in your blood because you got transmit something, and to be traveling, you need to be cleaned first, cleared, as the Scientologists would say, or vaccinated. So there's another level of security where now what was a private medical matter is now a matter of public interest for it to be known. And the next stage, I think, is mind virus monitoring. And this is where Neuralink comes in. Whether it's literal hardware or just more intense monitoring, your mind viruses are now going to become a matter of, I think, public. Um, it's like the public's interest to know.
Right. So right. So this is planned obsolescence. Like this is the way I see it happening is like if this, if like let's say Neuralink or, all right, here's like a very simple, basic, like, example, like Elon's, his truck, his cyber truck. Like, I think I knew about it. I don't know, maybe we all knew about it, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it still hasn't like rolled out. And I think that's therein lies like how a little bit how they do it. Like it's almost like your Netflix perspective, how like they roll out like the shows the year before something happens. I think they've been preparing us for this Neuralink. I don't really, I'm just, of course, it's just speculation because I could care less. Like what, at some point, you know, this is all just speculation. So it's just like whatever. And for now, it's just fun. But
Wait, you caught on something here
but
though.
that's like a really
Okay, because the Cybertruck, for people who don't know, yeah, it was a few years ago. It was 2019. It was supposed to come out, and the release of it
yeah.
was perfectly timed with the Blade Runner movie's similar Cybertruck. The Blade Runner movie was actually taking place in the future, Los Angeles
Oh,
2019 November. So he released it at a timing that was consistent with the movie where it actually comes out
oh
of.
my
So
God.
this is an intentional thing, but Blade Runner was about what? Replicants, people carrying. How do you determine who
Oh
has
my
the mind
God.
virus? How can you determine who's, safe to travel around? And it was like an inquisition for mind viruses essentially.
Oh my God. This is exactly why I knew if I called, it would be awesome. This like that's the type of stuff that I really like the tie-ins because I can do my own research, but like, well, whatever, surface level. But that's this type of like I don't remember that stuff. I know you talk about it all the time. But isn't that wild? The whole the thing about that tied to NASA designing it and like how it's like used in movies. Oh man, this is something that I haven't read or heard about in our Discord or anything, and I hope it helps like a little bit because I think it's important because they're warming us up. And imagine being like 10 or 15 years old again, and instead of like growing up with this stuff like kind of partially, now it's like fully. Like I think there's the 3D. I don't know, I feel like the 3D goggles kind of went in and out. They were like a fad, but I know that that's the kind of stuff that's warming up the next I should say, preparing the next generation for more like 24 hours a day kind of three-dimensional hookup, which at some point, how are we going to, Tim, I don't even know. It's messed up that I'm even talking about this,
No, this is
but
actually
it's like,
this is a
it's
big leap.
crazy.
This NASA simulation thing is huge
Yeah,
because I've been saying their real objective is not outer space, but inner space. It's about worldview warfare and controlling the space
right.
between your ears. And that would all pertain to getting us to accept the simulation.
Well, that's all the steam I had for tonight. I probably could go off and you mentioned a bunch of other stuff about flooding or whatever, and that's my jam. But I could this is it. This is like this is all IPS with the like the media and the video games. I think that was a good like touch and go kind of like quick shakedown of like the I think it's first person shooter preparation for AI dominance, or like I don't know how you want to call it, but
No, well, you're onto something, and
it's definitely
I'll
freaky.
continue on
So
this thread. I'll definitely continue on this thread because I
yeah,
think it all
yeah,
ties
yeah,
into the space odyssey, which isn't really about going to
yes.
space, but it's about merging with the screen, the monolith, the inner space odyssey. Well, great.
My mind is blown. It's crazy. All right, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the call. Call back anytime. Everyone, that's P Trippa.
All
Appreciate the
right,
coffee. Have a great evening and awesome, awesome call. And yeah, we could continue. And I would like the caller to call back at some point later this week and talk about the flood stuff because just having done my review of this tonight, I just focused on the connotations of the 1619 project as it relates to Civil War and 1776 and worldview warfare. But what he brought up with the flood is another aspect of the film. And of course, climate change is a subtext, but there's a flood theme that's very prominent. And there's an interesting part where this character is talking about being involved in finance and how if you can see the curve, you can read the curve, you can take advantage of it and avoid catastrophe. And I thought about that phrase, read the curve, because I've heard this expression, read the stitching on the fastball, which is a Limbaugh phrase, which I've used that a few times, read the stitching on the fastball, because it might be curving. But recently we've been talking about news benders. They bend our reality, bend the news. I call them curverts because they curve the horizon. And if you could read the news bending, you can know what is coming, which is why we predicted 3/11 2020 as ground zero Seattle for World War III to commence accurately. And it's because we were reading the curve. Elephant Tusk says solid caller. Oh, yeah, great research. And I'm going to delve into this because I think the key to understanding NASA is understanding inner space as their primary objective of controlling. And if you think about it, what was Stanley Kubrick involved with? It wasn't just simulating a moon landing, it was simulating the most famous headshot of all time, JFK's assassination. So there you have it. strong connection. And when you get into it, if you dig into this, you can find Lee Harvey Oswald thought he was going to work with NASA along with his buddies from Riley's Coffee. Well, maybe he did. Maybe he just wasn't on their fake space department because they're about controlling inner space, but he was actually part of their assassination hoax department. Elephant Tusk says our reality is just a large holographic collective dream. Now, I would say our internalized model of the world that we agree upon, our consensus model, it's not about shape or size, but our consensus model is this like illusion that they mold, they being the controllers over the media, the curators of our reality, the censors, and they exert control over the real world by controlling our internal representation of it. They put us into a doomsday cult. They weaponize superstition. Now, one of the things the caller brought up, the Blade Runner reference to the truck, is just fascinating because Blade Runner is about an inquisition, basically, trying to find the replicants who look like people, but there's something about them that would give away that they're AI. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I am calling for the Mandela effect. This is Henry Kissinger. I am not dead.
Okay, I thought this was Schwab.
No, this is Henry Kissinger.
It's probably the same actor wearing both of these rubber suits for these puppets that are used to
You
terrorize the
called me, yes, you called me, it's Klaus Schwab. I was with my PPTP and I put on your show.
Well, Klaus
But
Schwab.
That's him. Surprise! It's 5. How you doing, brother?
Pretty good here. Speaking of the Mandela effect, someone
I
here.
watched that movie.
Okay,
You
did.
know,
What's
I
your
can't
take?
believe you totally nailed it with the 1619 on the Leave the World Behind, man. I was saying that's like such an odd station in AM. I didn't even catch it that it was because I noticed the whole slant was what you said. You know what
Yep,
I mean?
yep.
Like, oh, you know, and totally Ewan McGregor leaving the Mexican lady on the side of the road. Total D-bag maneuver.
Oh yeah, that was basically a critique of the view on the border and the indifference that people have towards the issue as seen from the left. I mean, it's everything in there was calculated.
Right. Right. And she would have just told them, watch out for the Teslas. The Teslas are all on autopilot. Watch out. And it was like a stab at Elon.
Yes, that was it. That had to be a stab at Elon Musk. So and this is, people, if you get spoilers here, it's because we're offering spoilers on reality. But Elon is enemy number one, and the fact that they have his Teslas being used to jam up the system is just like, yeah, it's a hit piece. And they had the 116 miles or the fuel economy right there on the screen, just pretty prominent 116, which is all tied into the flood. The flood and Batman.
Now, here's what's funny. Here's what's funny too. You know, I'm a New York native, so the geography on that show is all totally wrong. Because there's nowhere near New York that you can see New York that has vast open fields. So, according to my calculations, they're trying to pretend that that was like Oyster Bay, you know, or Oyster Bay, New York, and that would be a place where you're never more than a mile from a store. You know what I mean?
I see. I see. Okay.
And there's a lot of deers on Long Island, but not like, you know, the amount that they claimed in that, you know, show. So it was all, you know, it was all a good bit of stretchery all around. But I did enjoy it.
Oh, it was incredible as a film. I mean, I was really immersed in it, and I took detailed notes. I didn't hate the movie, but I noticed things. I'm like, well, these are,
You seem like the type of guy who watches. You seem like the type of guy who actually watches the credits too, don't you?
I usually do. I usually stick around and.
All right, so I want you to notice that here, Julia Roberts has a lens master.
Now, what is a lens master?
So you have a makeup artist or a hair designer, and you know when you're a big star, you want to give them a credit in your production. and you also have a lens master. So a lens master is somebody who knows how to get the right lens to make you not look like an old lady in every scene. But they didn't do a good job because, her age is showing.
Well, she's
She's
still.
she can no longer pull it off that Richard Gere would give $1 million for a night with her.
Well,
Put it that way.
I would contend that this was intentional, that they made her into a Karen Harpy stereotype of a privileged.
Absolutely.
You see what they did?
Absolutely. What you said it when she was like, "This is our house," though, and she was like, "Yeah, well, I don't feel comfortable with you. I don't feel comfortable with you in your house."
I thought that was Obama and Michelle. That was Barack and Michelle Obama being portrayed when they
They
showed up.
went, yeah. I can't believe they were really involved too much high in production, but it's so funny that they got their name on there. And it's literally like so parallel with all the paranoia in their government, right? That everything that they were going to do. Like if they only had FEMA camps in that movie, that would have summed up the sum of all fears of Obama.
Absolutely. This movie was full of Obamophobia, and it was all by design. You could tell, like, and I saw some articles. They didn't say specifically, but apparently he's a huge movie buff and he had a lot of say and input. Didn't say what specifically, but I point out it would be the 1619 stuff and it would be the portrayal of the Karen woman by Julia Roberts.
Now let me ask you a question, right? You say the three stages of collapse in this movie, right? We've already went through stage one with the isolation with COVID lockdowns, right? Now it's like the media blitz, and basically we're in stage two because you look at this percolation going on with Elon Musk and Alex Jones is being more accepted. Like when Tucker and Alex Jones basically sat down together, what this alternative media or Republican media or right leaning media decided to do was this is the Cerebrus move in capitalism, but for media. So they're saying, we have big audiences or whatever, but we really got to get Crowder to get along with Alex Jones, to get along with Glenn Beck, to get along with Steve Bannon, because we have to lump them all together.
Yes, and they've done
There's
it.
no
Yes.
more of this. There's no more of this right, 3/4 right, 90% right. We got to throw them all in, from Alex Jones to Larry Elder. We're all in the same group, and we all love each other now.
That's a good observation. They put them all together. They really have created a monolith out of right-wing media. And I've said for some time that alt media is just part of the mainstream infrastructure. And now it's pretty clear. They have merged the alt media with the mainstream. And I foresaw this.
But listen. Right. So when you think about like all the politicians that are actors, right? They're all in SAG or AFTRA, and then I guess it's 13 years ago, we had the merger of SAG and AFTRA. So no longer was radio and television talent separate from movie talent. We are all under one union now. That's what happened. And now you'll see movies with like Wolf Blitzer or Barack Obama. It's because they are card-carrying union members of the Actors Union.
And like I pointed out,
You
there's a
know,
movie from
so
10 years ago where
so
Obama was in there as President Obama, but he basically said, society's collapsing, obey your authorities. So I'm like, wow, fascinating that he would be reprising this in the form of an entire movie based on it or expanding on that theme.
well, and it's always an enigma wrapped in another enigma. So what I was trying to get to that with the union is, and Cerebrus, like I said before, it's the theme of America. It's the theme of these crooks. It's always we get 50 companies, we merge them down to 5, then we do it to 2, and then next thing you know, there's a monopoly. And it happens to everything, right? They did it with Ma Bell. We had whatever, a billion independent newspapers. Now we have like Tribune and, Time Life, and Disney. There's like 4 companies that run everything, right? So you look at the actors union, the radio union, politicians would never, that's why all the TV when we were kids was corny, because they would just have an actor play the president. They would never have a real politician or a real news anchor man. It would be like, I'm Stephanie Silverman, and this is Action 7 News. And now you have a real CNN clip in a movie, So my point is, though, this is the typical merger acquisition. going on with not only with the talent in real life in that thing, but it's like the whole play of dominating countries and stuff like that. They were all
Fascinating.
about, you know, the
And
well, I kind of lost my
no, but look,
thought, but
Cerebrus.
anyway, I'm sorry.
Cerebus is the
Yeah,
three-headed dog that
yeah,
guards Hades. And we were talking about 1776. In 1776, of course,
right.
America founded, but also 2022 was actually a return to 1776 in terms of our astrology and the birth of America and the position of Pluto, which is Hades. So Cerebrus refers to Hades and the gates of hell opening, which would be releasing the Kraken, which is what Musk is doing, of course, with X.
Right. Right, and that's what I was saying. Thank you for bringing me back on track, Tim. The monolithic right media is set to knock it down,
Yes.
just like collective labor. You like, oh, I got a union, they fight for my. No, they're not fighting for your rights. They are one person that is easier to bribe than all of you voting members. You made this crooked guy your president, and now we're sending you jobs to Mexico. And you know what? We're going to give you $50,000 check, and at least you're getting that. Good luck getting another job.
Well, you nailed it.
You understand that?
Look, Musk is.
And that's what they're going to do. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to do to Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson and all that. If they have a chance to stop this surge that's happening, to do their show left to right, red to blue, it's all purple, and that's it. Knock them down.
Hey,
So
I
something
think you did.
stupid.
I think you nailed it.
Stephen Crowder. Stephen Crowder could come out as a kidnapper, and then he takes them all down. Larry Elder could be like an underwear sniffer, and he'll take down Glenn Beck.
Actually, that's true of. I think it's. There's. I don't want to start, but I can name a few people on the right that could be taken down like that. It's a cesspool. But one thing though, that you nailed
Oh,
it. They're
there
they're
has
being
to
they're
be.
being set up for a fall, and I think Elon Musk is a fall guy for free speech. He's not a savior for free speech. He's a fall guy, and he's going to provide the
So think about
pretext.
it. He never invented anything. He only bought himself in and had the narrative changed to make it like he's like I've done more. He had that conference call today. He goes, I've done more to save the planet than practically anybody. No, you didn't.
Well, look,
No, you
I
didn't.
I
Your Tesla car is horrible
I know
for saving the planet.
he's a character out of a storybook playing a role, but Disease X is gonna be the pretext for shutting down free speech, and so all the people who are lining up to worship at his rocket obelisks at this fake savior, yeah, he's gonna bring it all crashing down here very soon. And there's many predictions right now that
Yeah,
if
yeah,
he
and you got to remember because we know history. He wants to. He always says he's tying it since PayPal. That's still in his head. So whatever thoughts he had about PayPal taking over the monetary world, now this is X. This is his next shot at. I could get in with the defense contracting of the U.S. Well, maybe I'll get in with the CBDC, and it has to run through the X app. You're all in one. There's going to be your Vax passport, your money, your health records,
oh,
everything.
and a dating app, which who knows? Maybe they'll take some kind of control over. I don't know how people meet each other. I mean, they might even have that
Well,
array.
I heard there's a nice hot bachelor that just resurrected. Henry Kissinger, 101 very soon. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you very much for the call. That's Henry
Good
Kissinger,
night.
or the same actor who plays him in Darth Schwab. All right. Let's move on here. Yeah. So the Musk thing is very intriguing. The conversation he had with Alex Jones, he opened the gates. He opened up Hades. Alex Jones has been released. He's now in the Twitter sphere, which is very threatening and destructive to the people on the left who thought they had contained this thing. And it's not a coincidence that the anniversary of Sandy Hook is just a few days away. And of course, he had his recent conversation with Tucker Carlson in the wake of the UNLV shooter, who's a huge Alex Jones fan. Which then, of course, you can add to that shooting there, the fact that it was 666, or rather, 6 years and 66 days after the Vegas shooting. I mean, there's so many alignments here. In fact, this is the 666th month since RFK was shot and killed. Okay, let's continue. I'm going through the things I had earmarked. A lot of people are sharing ISS fakery as a result of that video. Lean Dion says same director did the series Mr. Robot, which is about a complete societal collapse from cyber attacks as well. Oh yeah, and it is cyber attacks. And they don't say it explicitly, but I suspect that the whole movie is about the domestic violent extremist attack on the power grid and on the cyberspace. Flat Earth Zone, who has 101,000 subscribers, also uploaded the video. So it's a video that we did. I went to the city council when this channel started, and the intention was to do these weekly, and we got sabotaged. We have our White House connected stalker, but that's no longer an issue, and we do have plans to resume a lot of the things that we used to do. One of the reasons why we're activating the press pass carriers for the beginning of 2024. And the first cyber symposium is going to be targeting the ISS. So this is just perfect timing for me that that video is getting such traction because I'm going through all of the comments and finding a lot of videos, and it's the research is just going on nonstop. Rolling Stone here complaining a year after he claimed Alex Jones would be permanently suspended, Musk, again they misspelled it, M-U-S-K, it's M-U-S-Q. Musk welcomes a conspiracy theorist back to the site. And again, it was Musk, Tates, Gates, Vivek. And the overall messaging from Musk was it's the extinctionists versus pro-human. They're kind of reframing things. The globalists are now the extinctionists. It's kind of science fiction-y. Echo Charlie says Tim is unmasked and unmatched. Yep, hot skull. My mind is not masked nor vaxxed. Here's the image from the movie of the two children wearing the shirts that obey and NASA. It's not even subliminal. In case you missed it from TMZ, Alabama cop suspended over tasering crying black man. Yeah, it looked like a scene out of Reno 911. It was clownish. And I lean towards it being a psyop because it's so inflammatory. And it's on TMZ. But we'll see. I don't take anything here as being random in terms of the timing of things. And this movie coming out at this time and the 1619 project being brought up. And I haven't seen any reviews yet to bring up the 1619 project. They all just scrape the surface. And the reason why is they're looking at story and what they're literally saying. But to get this stuff, you have to read into clues. And this level of digging into movies is usually something that's done by movie buffs. People who are just into the nuance, people who are into making movies themselves, but we're doing it from a different perspective. And if you haven't seen the movie, I think it's called, the American version of Utopia, you should watch it because it kind of explains a lot of what we describe here. But primarily, it's about a group of comic book fans, and that would be us. I mean, the auto hoaxers, because what they do is they're going through these comic books and they're finding out that the storylines are actually predicting what's happening in the news later, specifically epidemics, pandemics, and outbreaks. So they get an advanced copy of an unreleased issue that's hasn't been out yet, and they find out what's about to happen. This makes them a threat to national security. Imagine if you got a hold of the script for 2020, like if you attended event 201 as a fly on the wall. Anyway, that's kind of the premise here, is that we're looking at media recognizing its use, all media, in creating self-fulfilling prophecies, and the entertainment is inseparable from the news media. 5 Minutes of Fame says, love this program. Appreciate you calling in. Has anybody checked on Eminem? He's been dead since today, according to Wikipedia. He was actually pronounced dead on December 10th, like 3 days ago, so that would be today. So the poll that was put out there by Musk, reinstate Alex Jones, was split 70-30 in favor of. Matt Wallace, who has 1 million followers, and look, the more followers somebody has, the less discernment they have when it comes to Twitter and X. It's insane. So this guy's sharing this video. Look, an entire crowd at an Army versus Navy game are chanting F Joe Biden. And this has been widely shared by somebody with millions of followers. Okay, well, it got spread, made a lot of people feel good. They all jumped up and they said, yes, we're going to win this election. Well, it turns out it's fake. The audio is fake. There are no words being chanted. Somebody added this in. They're deep faking themselves. And it doesn't matter because this is reality fluidity at its finest. If people believe it and it settles in, they move on to the next thing. You can't correct the original error. It's just how this reality works for most people. They just absorb the reality passively 24/7. By the way, if you go to infiniteplainsociety.shop, we are selling these neck gaiters that say, I wear this for chemtrails, not COVID-19. Those are available for those of you who want to be protected from chemtrails, but you don't want to be confused with the COVIDiots. So there they are, infiniteplainsociety.shop, just another way to support this channel. I have big plans for 2024. It's all about getting Autohoaxology 101 out there. So if you're waiting for your copy, it's coming. And also making these cyber symposiums a standard monthly feature to go along with the tabloid, the Insider. And the purpose of it is to target specific events at a time or specific features or facets, pillars, of the fake world stage. For example, the ISS would be one of our first objectives. But after that, I kind of want to turn our sights on January 6th. And then chemtrails. And anything else. But I have a list of things that I think are important to go through. Various areas where we want to unleash our deep dive reporters. And of course, the ISS is just one facet of it. And it's an open, it's a valid thing to debate. And the fact that we're debating it is very problematic for the people who just believe it's up there. But all they can do is shift the burden of proof. And I like unpacking the various sleights of mind, magic tricks they use to get people to accept ideas without thoroughly examining them. Loaded questions, logical fallacies. It's a mental labyrinth. And you can't get off the grid by running for the hills. You have to get off the grid mentally. It's a philosophical problem. People talk about this in terms of it being spiritual warfare and it's the satanic cabal or whatever, which might be true. But I think the real way out of this isn't looking at it from the lens of just politics, nor going all the way into just spiritual, where it just gets overly simplified good versus evil. But I think it's more about the nuanced philosophical deconstruction, and that would include epistemology and recognizing the role of media as supplanting perception and the kind of damage that has done. Plain Decoded asks if we are still live. We're live for the next 7 minutes. Vinny Barbarino 29 says, I wonder why UFOs have lights. Yeah, and why do they crash? I mean, they're capable of flying across the flat galaxy and they crash here. And then they crash and they actually get destroyed and they die. Like they don't have airbags, they don't have sophisticated safety devices. That makes zero sense. And why do they have lights? Well, unless they're high enough to reflect the sun, they wouldn't. And if they were that high, you wouldn't see them. They'd be that far from the Earth. Unless it was near sunset. Unless they're signaling, which doesn't make any sense either. Why would you need headlights? I mean, there's just so many questions. The other explanation is that UFOs aren't physical crafts, and that the lights that we see are something else. I have a few ideas. The first person to see a UFO, the first UFO sighting, wasn't the 1947 Roswell crash that happened in Corona Field, which I visited during the Corona lockdowns. It was in 1946, and it was Marjorie Cameron, who played the role of the Whore of Babylon in the Babylon Working with Jack Parsons. She reported seeing one in 1946. Plain Dakota says, when you're in front of the council again, wear an IPS shirt. What's interesting is I uploaded that video on my own channel. I thought, you know what? From the very beginning, I said, I'm going to be censored. We're going to be targeted. So the objective is to get our content to be carried by others. I had a whole outline, actually a marketing plan based on the WHO's 5 stages of a pandemic. And it was about how you take an idea, a concept, or even a philosophical movement, a methodology. How do you take something like a religious cult and make it blow up? And one of the key things is it has to be able to exist independent of the person that starts it. It has to be transmissible, but in its entirety, where that person doesn't have to exist for it to exist. And that was one of the objectives behind kind of outsourcing, making everything open source, but also outsourcing research by spreading it out there. So I never intended for my channel to stick around and for that video or that comment to continue to grow in numbers, but the intention was let it get carried by others who aren't going to be targeted. And I think that's the reason why that video is even surviving today, because it's not on my channel. But next time I do it, I will wear something like IPS or something. That way it does get traced back. But that was a different operation altogether. And we made a concerted effort here. It was like this whole subject of NASA criticism is being boxed in by a religious cult that insists that we're in a domed enclosure and it's time for Bible study, not for exploring Antarctica. And I was really opposed to that, especially because they were so um, just so exclusive, and we weren't invited. In fact, we went to one of their conferences, and they pulled us out of they actually kicked us out. My point being, the conversation needed to be spread to wider audiences, and so we did a billboard, went to the city council. I told them the ISS was fake, and we just made these moves in order to guarantee the conversation would be reacted to by the mainstream media, which we found to be hilarious because they had no way to respond to it appropriately. Lean Dion says stupiders would not have shared the clip if he had known it was IPS. Yeah, that's true too, because I'm the one who branded him Ghoul Peters because of his weird obsession with fake vax clots. Zbigniew Brzezinski, 1972, said, quote, shortly, the public will be unable to reason or think for themselves. They will only be able to parrot the information they've been given on the previous night's news. Prescient. It's almost like he knew. David Knight had a scathing tweet here because of Alex Jones being reinstated. And it's worth reading, it's a long one. I worked for Alex Jones for nearly a decade, had a 3-hour program where I gave my take on what was happening without editorial interference until 2020. In 2020, he showed what he was made of with the 4D chess excuse for Trump rolling out lockdowns, medical martial law, and creating the shots. Then he went in on Stop the Steal, laying the groundwork for it 2 days after the election with the big lie about blockchain quantum ballots, identifying those who rigged the election, with 20,000 National Guard arresting people 2 days after the election. Even Rush Limbaugh commented on it. It had 1.4 million views its first day, and Clarence Thomas's wife sent it to Mark Meadows, asking if it was true. I opposed it here and on my InfoWars show. I was told I would be fired if I kept it up. I continued to call it BS. When Alex was raising money for his January 6th shenanigans, I called it a grift on air. I was fired on 17 December 2020. I continued to warn people away from January 6th, up to and including that morning on my independent show. I was on record saying it would be a setup loaded with federal agent provocateurs. Tucker and Alex are close friends. Both are trust fund kids with extensive family connections to the CIA. Agent provocateurs come in many guises. Again, that's David Knight. I noticed that he disappeared because he wasn't towing the line with the let's take the whole conspiracy InfoWars demographic and attach it to the voting booth behind Donald Trump. He wasn't behind that. And I wasn't either. All right, let me see what else we have here. Obama has revealed many things. This is a tweet about the movie. Revealed that we are at the end. They also revealed that the white Tesla Elon Musk is going to trap us by jamming the roads. And again, this would tie into the whole blackout thing. Fascinating all around. The Donnie Darko connections are intriguing. And I'm pretty sure we're going to have more information, more clues, more symbolism, predictive programming to come out of the movie. I'm sure we haven't seen the end of it, but I would say that we are pretty much cutting edge as far as breaking down the real subtext here. I haven't seen it in the mainstream reviews, and this is always the case because, look, if you're not taking the metascript view into perspective, you can't get the real meaning of the movie. And your standard blue pill movie reviewers don't understand predictive programming. They think it's just the artist trying to reflect the zeitgeist. Sometimes they have these coincidences or they're just prescient. They don't include this. They don't include the manipulation of our media wherever it is. And that's just how this place works. So if you want real movie reviews that come from an off-world stage perspective, you really do have to go to the people breaking it down at this level. And there are tons of people doing it. I'm going through my threads. So if you have anything to add, you can go to the blog or ips.monster and just comment, and I read all comments live. And of course, Discord or Gilded. Gilded is a more popular hangout, and Gilded is where we spend most of our time and post most of our comments. All right, thanks for joining. We will be live tomorrow morning for the IPS morning deprogram. And I call it a deprogram because we're not programming here. We're not programmable here. Quite the opposite. Anyway, I appreciate the comments and callers as usual. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get the archives in case you just joined us. And I have to delete these because our channels are targeted. So there's a good chance this one will stay up because I haven't crossed any lines. But generally, like if you're on YouTube, the channels will disappear. This is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms auto hoax, and I'm going to be going back to the 24/7.
I'm on auto hoax and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes.
My buddy and me.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'ma be an auto hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless eyes. Ain't got no heart, ain't got no soul. Food, water, weather, maps, TV, bones, books, secrets, symbols, numbers, planets, etc.
Readers would not have shared the clip if he had known it was IPS. Yeah, that's true too. Because I'm the one who branded him Ghoul Peters because of his weird obsession with fake vax clots. Zbigniew Brzezinski, 1972, said, quote, "Shortly, the public will be unable to reason or think for themselves. They will only be able to parrot the information they've been given on the previous night's news." Prescient. It's almost like he knew. David Knight had a scathing tweet here because of Alex Jones being reinstated. And it's worth reading, it's a long one. "I worked for Alex Jones for nearly a decade, had a 3-hour program where I gave my take on what was happening without editorial interference until 2020. In 2020, he showed what he was made of with the 4D chess excuse for Trump rolling out lockdown.